Hello everyone. Today this video is going to be about converting a wireless access point that I got off eBay from a controller based access point to an autonomous access point. I got a couple of these access points real cheap, and it looks like some of the ones I got, even though their model number reflects they were supposed to be autonomous access points, they had been loaded with some controller based firmware. I've read a couple ways of doing this online, and it seems there's a couple ways to get the flash file, the new image file, copied over. Once the image file's copied over, the rest is pretty simple. I've already got an image file on the device itself, and I'm just going to show how I got that image there. And I'm also going to look at another way to see if it actually works. Then I'm going to actually set it to be the main boot image and see if that'll put in a autonomous access point instead. Now this is a console server that's on the same subnet as one of the links in my computer, and the port that the access point is plugged into. So the first way it seems to get it over is you have to break the boot process and then enter a few commands from the recovery mode. So you basically press escape a few times and it breaks the boot there. In order to do that, you have to have the boot break enabled though, and you have to do that from within the software if it's not already enabled. Once you're in the boot mode, you have to set a few variables here. You have to tell it the IP address you want to use for the access point. I think that's default gateway. I don't remember if it's default router or default gateway, so I'll just use both. Then you have to initialize a few of the subsystems. We'll need TFTP, oddly enough, it looks like some of the items are missing here. Those are supposed to be two of the options we have that we don't seem to have right now. So I'll just show the other way that I used first and see if we can find out actually how to do that one later. You see, this is the controller-based image because it has K9W8. The autonomous images seem to have K9W7 instead. The default username and passwords are Cisco, all uppercase. And we have to wait a little bit for some process to start in the background so we can go into enable mode. In order to actually get to a configuration prompt, we have to enable that, because by default in these controller-based images it's not available. There's a command to do that. This command's not in the help system. But that will turn on configuration. Then right away I like to just set the logging so it doesn't keep messing my screen up. The trick seems to be you need to give it an IP address that's on your subnet, but you need to prevent it from constantly resetting back to DHCP. So first you give it an IP address. And this is already bridged into the gigabit Ethernet port also. And you can see we can ping through. But if you attempt to copy the file over, it'll start to load the file over, but about halfway through what happens is it goes back into DHCP and the file copy process aborts. So I found online the way to stop it from doing that seems to be to set the default gateway of the access point to be the same IP address as you assign to the access point itself. And there it goes, it resets it back to DHCP. You can already see it's failing the transfer now. So instead we set the default gateway to be itself, and you'll get a lot of weird messages popping up on the screen every so many seconds. But then when you attempt to copy it over, reset the IP address as well. When you set that default gateway, it gives this a lot. Every 3 or 4 seconds it tries to translate that name, but it doesn't seem to abort the copy. It doesn't try to switch back to DHCP mode and cause the copy over to fail. So that gives us the time we need to copy the autonomous image over. So you just go pick a cup of coffee or something while you're waiting for this. So you'll have time to do some small task. It takes about maybe 2 minutes or so here. I think it's about maybe a 5 or 6 megabyte file. Oh, 9 megabytes, my bad. So now you can see I've got those copied over. Actually, I got 2 of them copied over. We still have some space left here. According to this, we still got about 7 megabytes free here. So we can really only unpack one of those images here. And the way we do this is you can manually extract it using the tar command if it's available on this. Okay, that's only available from the ROM monitor. Or you can use the archive command, I believe, here. And so here it tells us that we're extracting the files, and it's overriding if it has to. And once it finishes everything, it should automatically reboot. There was probably an option for it to give me some type of a progress ticker, but I didn't check to see. So we'll just have to wait on that as well. Kind of wish these things used compact flash cards where you could just take it out and reload a new one, and it'd be a lot easier than some of these things here. And now it's rebooting. So at this point when we boot, we should be booting up into the new autonomous image instead. Or actually, it's probably an older image, but it's the autonomous image instead of the controller-based image. And I'm going to try to abort the boot process again and see if I have the commands I expect. This time it gave me the options, it seems. So now I have all of the options. I'm not sure if I just needed to abort earlier in the process the last time I tried or not, but it looks like it gave me all the available commands this time. So what you would do here is you'd first want to set your variables needed to connect to the, give it an IP address that you can connect to. And once you do these things, you should be able to actually access the other system. I don't think it has a ping command available to verify it, but the way you could find out is just try to copy a file over. If you have a TFTP server, just any file on the server. Of course, you'd really try to copy over the firmware, but in this case, I don't want to copy it. I don't think they'll have enough flash space left. And this is the problem I've actually had. I've tried to do it this way, and it seems like a lot of times it just doesn't seem to actually access the TFTP server. I see what I'm doing wrong here is I'm actually using the wrong IP address on this one. But even before, I've had a situation where it would start to access the TFTP server, and then halfway through it would somehow lose access and it wouldn't get it back. It doesn't seem to like backspaces or any characters either. It seems to be it's a little bit picky about things. You can't press any control character because then it's not a command that it recognizes. If you mistype something, like so it does apparently recognize backspace, but in this case here I was able to copy the file over, and then once you copy the file over, you actually have a command tar which you can use to extract that directly from ROM-mon. It tells you here your options. You can choose to extract, and you specify which file and where you want to extract it to, and it's supposed to extract it. Then you would just specify the boot option to be the path of your new image, and then boot it. But I haven't actually tried that method because I never really seem to get it to work. When it's copying the larger flash file that we're trying to copy over, halfway through it just starts timing out and it aborts. So the first method I've tried, actually just using the image itself while it's running, seems to work the best for me anyways. But once you've got the file over, you can just forcefully upgrade it. In this case here we see, because of the command I entered last time, it's now using the K9W7 image, which is the autonomous image. And then if all goes well, you can delete the old image and free up a little bit of flash space. We already got a different prompt here. Instead of username or password, I'm just getting a regular enable prompt like you'd see at a normal router here. And actually I probably do have enough space to expand that image from tar. So I'm going to try to reboot to recovery and just see if I can do the same thing via recovery, if it's possible to download and expand the image like that. Since I'm already booting from this image, I'm going to delete the file associated with it here. I just basically press escape a few times while it's booting. What I've read online, there's a specific moment you're supposed to press it, but it seems like if you just press it several times while it's loading, it gets you to this prompt here. Okay, so it looks like it's copying, but it's stopping every now and then. It's actually got further this time than it did the last time I tried it this way. Because last time I tried it this way, it just kept stopping more and more frequently and eventually just timed out. So hopefully it gets the entire image file this time. If this was one way that you would try to boot it. Hey, it got the whole thing. And it says I have 24 megabytes free, so we can also extract it here if you didn't have an existing image and you only had to do it this way. And there it tells us there that we actually don't have enough space on the device. So apparently I had a little bit less space than I thought I had. So I would have to delete the other image I have on here. I kept both of them around just in case if I couldn't copy it over right. But up there you see it have it at the top, so I just end up deleting that first image there. That should give me enough space I need to extract the rest of it there. This should free up about 9 more megs there. And it's very picky about how you enter the name. If you just enter the name by itself, it doesn't automatically look into Flash to find it. So you have to specifically enter the entire thing. And you can also extract it directly over FTP, but I just feel that it's a little bit better to go ahead and copy the whole file over first and then extract it. If I'm extracting it over FTP and it messes up, then I just got a bunch of individual files hanging around. But if I just copy it over, I can make sure I have the whole thing over first, and then if it messes up, I can just delete that one file easily, then do whatever I need with it. Whether it's copy another image over or throw it in the trash. This is I've only used only have 3 of these C1140s, and this is the only one so far that I've had like that. The other 2 seem to have been already autonomous when I got them. I've only really been able to experiment around a little bit with them so far. To save space, I imagine you could probably, if you don't use the internal HTTP server, you could probably delete all those HTML files and free up a little bit of space. Because I think it should still boot the firmware image just fine without them. You just wouldn't have a web access that way. so it's extracted now, and tells me how much space I've used, how much space I have left here. Still got about 7 megs free. Once we want to boot it, we have to tell it which image to boot. And you have to tell it the entire path, including the image file name itself. So if we want to boot this one here, which we just extracted, not exactly sure which one it is, but I think it'd be that would be it there. I'm not really sure what the difference between these two firmware images are. The 12 version I had found on the other access point I had. The tar file was there, as well as the expanded directory. The 15 version found in one of the various links on how to convert these from autonomous to autonomous from the controller based. I was trying to find some instructions on how to convert these over, but I'm not really sure what the difference is between one version or the other version. They appear to be the same, but I'm sure there's some minute differences between them. But anyway, that's basically the two different ways to copy over the image file in order to convert from an autonomous, from a controller based to an autonomous access point. If you wanted to convert from an autonomous to a controller based, I'm not exactly sure what you'd have to do that. But something that you may have to do if you get one of these on eBay, and turns out that even though it was supposed to be a autonomous access point based on its part number, somehow it was actually a controller based image loaded onto it. I guess that's what you get when you buy things cheap like that on eBay for home labs, though. So right now I got two different images on here. I might just play around with them later to see what the difference is between them. I'm not sure if it'll automatically boot one or the other, or without the boot system set. One thing I know is different is this here seems to have fewer files. This only seems to have one, what looks like the image file, and then a few other little files associated with it. And this one here, it looked like it extracted a few other things associated with it. So it looks like maybe they used some type of signing on it here, but there's two different files here. One with the only difference being MX or XX. Then a few other additional files here. We don't have any of these file hashes files or the image signs here. Basically all of these are new, and that is different between the two. But basically that's it. So if you end up buying a cheap access point on eBay, the 1142 model here is what I have, that comes loaded with a controller based image, and you thought it was supposed to be the autonomous image. This is one way to convert it over. Now you'll have to get the autonomous image some other way, perhaps from another access point you have, or Cisco themselves. But if it's trying to constantly connect to a controller, you can log into the original image and tell it to have a default gateway of itself, give it the bridge group and IP address that you need. That'll stop it from constantly trying to reset back to DHCP. Then you can copy the image over that way. Or if you break into the recovery here, you can enter the set commands, and then you can copy it over that way. In order to break into that recovery command, though, you have to have the boot break. So if you do a show boot, you'll see whether break is on or not here. I'm not sure if you need both of these or not. I just enabled both of them when I tried to break it the first time, because I noticed that no matter whether I pressed escape anywhere, it would not go into the prompt that various different sites were showing. So when I was able to access the configuration, I enabled the break in them, and then once I did that, I was able to get into the recovery mode. I'm not exactly sure what the mode button does. I've read something somewhere that if you forget the password and mode button's disabled, you can actually end up getting bricked out and not be able to log in or recover it at all. But I'm not entirely sure about that. And basically from there you can choose which image you want to boot. You have to tell it to boot the right image. I'm not sure if you'd have to set the environment variable each time if you didn't. So what you would do is boot system and then tell it what you want to boot. And then that should be it. That should cause it to always boot with the firmware image of the autonomous firmware. Alright, so yeah, it's loading the right version now. I did read about another way to do the same thing to get a new image on there. There was a method that involved using the mode button. It requires you to set the IP address of your interface or your network card to be in the 10 block, 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.20 or something like that, with a /8 network mask, and then copy the file to a TFTP server and with a certain file name. I wasn't really sure what all that method entailed, but it actually looked like it's a little bit more difficult than just booting into the image and setting the IP address default gateway, then copying the file over. That seems like it's the easiest method to copy the image file over, and then probably followed by booting into the ROM-mon recovery and then setting the variables and copying it over and manually extracting the image. But there's probably a few other ways. It's kind of wish they didn't make it that difficult, but they do. So if anybody has another way that's easier they want to recommend in case I buy another one of these in the future, and it also has the controller based instead of autonomous firmware, feel free to let me know. And thanks for watching.